Hi, my name is George Coles, and I am an avid retro video game collector.
Do a barrel roll!
I have decided to document my journeys as I grow my collection. Please join me as I share with you my finds. Welcome to Retro Game Treasure Hunting. Hi everybody, and welcome to Retro Game Treasure Hunting. My name is George Coles, and we're just going to quickly run through a bunch of my newest pickups. A lot of them have piled up since I last talked to you guys, so let's jump right into it. First off, we have the Three Stooges for the NES. I've said it before, I'm a sucker for games that have weirdly licensed games that aren't really that great. This wasn't a terrible game. It's definitely not anywhere near the top of the list of NES games. I would say I'd give this one a 2 out of 5. 1 being the worst and 5 being the best, I would give this a 2. Next up, moving on to the Super Nintendo. The Magical Quest starring Mickey Mouse. Now, Mickey Mouse games on Super Nintendo are kind of hit and miss. This is actually a really fun game. It's a little bit short on the short side. I really rather enjoyed it though. Capcom, of course, puts it out. Capcom makes pretty good games, or at least for that era, they definitely did. I would say this is solid 4 out of 5. Next up, probably my favorite game out of everything we have here, and that's Final Fantasy II for Super Nintendo. I believe, if I remember right, this is Final Fantasy V, actually, or 4. I'm not 100% sure how they match up, but this is really a solid game. Another solid entry. Super Nintendo had a lot of really good RPGs. 2 really good Final Fantasy games on the system, even though they're numbered incorrectly. They're still really fun. And much like I said with the Three Stooges games, this game is toys. Now, if you haven't heard of this, it's an old Robin Williams movie. I don't think it did very well. And I didn't even actually know that they had made a game for it. I seen it. I was like, well, I'll give it a shot. It was only a couple dollars for it. I mean, that's part of the thing with picking up these bad games is they're usually not that expensive because nobody really wants them. But not a good game at all. Kind of an interesting thing. As you can see that they're still in the era. Nintendo, basically anything was licensed to be a game. Super Nintendo a little bit less, but still had some of it. Obviously this. I'd say give it a 1 out of 5. Next up we have Scooby-Doo Mystery, which is kind of cool. I always dig. I try to keep a little bit of these if they're not totally damaged. It says Multiverse Video Games. We sell, trade, and repair RSX, which I'm guessing is PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. So this came from a used game store 15 years ago originally, which it probably came from somewhere else. The game itself, Scooby-Doo Mystery, it's a really fun game. I actually like this one a lot. It's not terribly long. It's not terribly difficult. I would say I'd give this a 3 out of 5. Pretty solid game. You can pick it up cheaply. It's definitely worth a run through. It's not the greatest game in the world, but not the worst. Next up, a game I look fondly upon. And it's what's the actual name? MTV's Beavis and Butthead. If you remember Beavis and Butthead, I loved that cartoon when I was a kid or a teenager when it came out. It was it was wrong, so weird and different. Very enjoyable show. The game is pretty solid. I would say I'd give it a 3. It doesn't hold up as well. It's kind of repetitive. But the gameplay is fun. It's interesting. Your goal is to get to a Guar concert, which is kind of neat. A kind of a time capsule of the era. If you don't know who Guar is, they were really big in the mid-90s. They're a heavy metal band, mostly known for their stage show. But really, I have a lot of sentimental value to that. More than the game itself, the sentimental value does it for me. Just like on this one. WCW vs. the World for PlayStation 1. As you can see, it's a greatest hits title, so they sold a ton of these, obviously. This is the forgotten THQ WCW game. Everybody talks about the Nintendo 64 games and how great they were, and with very good reason. They were amazing games. This was kind of the jumping off point. This was where it started. This came out a little bit before those, and you could see where they were going with it. It wasn't quite all the way there yet. It wasn't as good as it was going to be, but still a very solid game. And I like to pick up some of these because of the roster changes and different wrestlers in there. I'd give this one actually, again, another 3 out of 5, a very solid game. Not the greatest wrestling game in the world. If you love WCW, if you collect for PlayStation, if you like wrestling games, you're going to like that game. Now next up, one of my favorite games on the PlayStation 2. And that's Star Wars Battlefront 2. I love this game. The new Battlefront, it has its distractors, the remakes or reimagining. But this game, this is just hours and hours of fun. I like it a lot. It's so much fun just playing along. And the battles on this game, I remember playing along with my friends and just having total fun playing this game. It's a shooter type game. It's got a little bit of the original trilogy and this prequel trilogy in there. Very enjoyable game. I would give this a 4 out of 5. Next up, and just a fun game. Next up, we have Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. If you remember, these games for the GameCube were actually really fun. This is really heavy because it's got everything in here. This was actually a really fun game. It was kind of an action-adventure RPG. Some RPG elements, a lot of action. Really nice graphics, especially. Even now, it kind of holds up pretty well. I mean, it doesn't look 100% terrible. Some of these games look terrible now in comparison to what the graphics we have now. But for a 15-year-old game, or even might be even older, 04 is when this was made. So a 15-year-old game, I was right on the money. It looks pretty decent still. I thought this was a really fun game, a really solid choice for a pickup. I'm going to give this one a 4. Again, another one of the great games for the GameCube. Now next up, Star Fox Adventures. This game is much maligned. The name, I think if you took this name off and changed the characters, people would look at this more fondly than they do. But because it's a Star Fox game and it's not a flying game, it's more of an adventure game, as it says. I mean, it says right here on the back, out of the cockpit and into epic adventure. So I think people looked at this kind of didn't look at it so favorably because it's not the Star Fox we love. But I like this game a lot. I think this is a really fun game. I think this, if you're a GameCube owner, that you should definitely, this is one of the must-haves, I think, for the system. I really think it's one of the better games, one of the more fun experiences on that system. I would say I'd probably give this one actually a 5 out of 5 if I'm going to be perfectly honest. I think it's that good. I think it's maligned for no apparent reason. And last but not least, Donkey Kong's Jungle Beat. And I know you're looking at it and you're saying to yourself, you're missing something. You need the bongos. Got them too. So, just a fun experience. Now, don't get me wrong. This is not the best game of the bunch. This is just a fun game that you play by playing bongos. I mean, it's a rhythm game. It's a fun game. This is your controller, so I mean, it's crazy, and I like this. And these are very, you could see that they were played on, but they're still very responsive, very springy. I really enjoy this. I mean, who doesn't like Donkey Kong? Again, this is another maligned game, but I think Nintendo takes chances with things, and I enjoy them that they take chances. This, to me, I'm going to enjoy immensely. I give this one a 4 out of 5. With all that being said, got some really good pickups, some really solid GameCube games, some solid PlayStation 2 games, solid Super Nintendo games. Everything all around, pretty happy about all my purchases. I enjoy everything I have. Hope you guys, let me know what you think. What do you think, what is your favorite game of the group that I bought? Do you think something different? Do you think that Star Fox or Donkey Kong are terrible games? Do you think I'm crazy for liking them? Do you like the Toys game? Do you think there's something fun? Maybe I haven't played enough of it. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I only got about an hour of gameplay into it, so maybe it gets better as it goes along. Let me know what you think. Hit me up in the comments here. Make sure you hit like and share, all that other good stuff. But with all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Retro Game Treasure Hunting.